A screaming comes across the sky. It has happened before, but there is nothing to compare it to now. Colliding with the gravel of a main road, the sound then coalesces with the steady beating of footsteps, drawing themselves closer to the origin of the ghastly noise. By now, nothing of the original echo remains, but the fear and trembling it brought about in the doctor and Penny remains like a phantasm. Irreverently, they bolt up the driveway of a house, now unbounded of faux pas by this spectral admission. The doctor twists round a corner. He holds his sonic screwdriver out in front of him. It is a utility that occasionally opens doors. There is no need for him to be waving it about, but necessity is an abortion of the moment, and the doctor clutches it with the confidence that a weapon would provide. He knows it offers no offensive capability, but it soothes his mind. Blood, suddenly, blood is everywhere. It's orange blood. "We're too late!" The doctor nearly collapses to the ground in distress, but manages to instead hold his ground. Penny, his faithful and astute companion, witnesses the horror of the blood. It's everywhere, painted in the manner that a child may attempt to define a landscape on a blank canvas with finger paint. It's the orange that unnerves her. The invariable red of human blood suddenly becomes a curse. In her mind, she begs to know why there couldn't have been a single incident of discoloration in blood she had seen. At least then she could have lied to herself about the origins of this alien snuff installation. It's midday in an idyllic Norfolk front garden. The grass shimmers from the reflective sunlight, a reminder of the heavy rain that passed not less than an hour ago. An ascending hexad of neglected flower pots forms part of a centerpiece, counterpointed by an overgrown fern that towers over its horticultural subordinates, inciting fear in the same ineffectual way as a newspaper columnist. A feral cat has taken a shit in one of the pots. It reeks, but the residents haven't noticed yet, as it is masked by the aroma of lavender, turning into a pungent combination that smells like really shitty lavender. Not more than half a mile away, a man is held captive by a creature of such fierce hatred that it has somehow evaded the penetrating smell of shit lavender. It deliberates on the fate of this victim. Back in the garden, a blue telephone box from the future materializes. The doors swing open and reveal a paradoxically spacious interior, as well as the doctor and Penny, who promptly acclimatize themselves to this new locale. "I wonder on Earth where we are," says the doctor, as he steps onto the surface of an alien world, one that statistically he is likely to have never visited before, and in consideration of the Drake equation, has serious potential for intelligent life. It is not entirely unfeasible that he has arrived on a planet in which the inhabitants are conceptions of pure malevolence. Surely chance would sooner or later see him encounter such unfiltered evil. After all, the endless granite quarries and jumpsuit-wearing human colonists had proven to be exceptionally accommodating during his travels. An entropic discord sooner or later was bound to occur. Suddenly he noticed that Penny was beaming at him. "This is my house," she said, ecstatic, and as if all at once his speculation was realized. They had landed in Norfolk, and it smelt like shit. The doctor, trying to mask his disgust, can only manage to ask her again, "Is it?" He feels as if he is choking on the wind. "Yes, that's a stroke of luck," she maintains. "Is it?" "Yes." Penny is now trying to unlock her front door. There is a novelty walrus statuette guarding it, with a hidden cavity in its ass, where an emergency spare key waits. "Where are you going?" the doctor demands. "Just to get something," she says, opening the door and stepping inside. "Okay." But for the doctor, he would prefer to be almost anywhere else in time and space right now. Not only did it smell unpleasant, but there was a presence that he found impossible to account for. If his travels across the universe had provided him with anything, he had gained a remarkably acute intuition, and danger here in Norfolk was a certainty. He removed his top hat and began to pat his head. What could possibly exist in this terrestrial dead end that could endanger their lives? Penny closes the door, trying to temporarily expel the divergent instances of experience she had received during her travels with the doctor. Somewhere, sometime, someplace, something had drastically affected her ability to function. It began as a sort of residual headache, a sense of emptiness and insatiability. Her psyche had transmuted into a checklist of every minor symptom of every common psychological disorder in a matter of days. By no means did she feel a recurring need to lie to the doctor about any matter. But this time was different. It felt more invasive and something that he was, at least partially, responsible for. Like an effeminate prison inmate's asshole, the scope of her reality had been stretched beyond its capacity in merely a few days. Moving herself through the laborious humanity of her living room, she sat in the kitchen and poured water into a glass. The way the water distorted her reflection uncannily mimicked her condition. The woman's Davros. The list was endless: ontological attacks, a transmission through space decaying rapidly. Penny Lane no longer meant anything. It never meant anything but a goddamn Beatles song. A gag her parents would have used to lighten the mood at parties when she were at the younger age in which it was acceptable to trophy a child. Penny Lane was nothing but propagation of wit and musical taste. There is a fucking horse in the house frolicking about in the lounge. How did she miss it? Must have been the humanity. Nay, it whinnies. She throws her glass of water at the horse. Not sure why she had originally poured it, considering her strong aversion to anything that isn't strawberry-scented. It fragments into shards that embed themselves into a red carpet. In a curious physical deviation, not a single piece of glass has lodged itself into the horse, amounting Penny's provocation into nothing more than soft impact and a shattering sound. The horse, now lackadaisical and snuggling into the fabric of the carpet, looks at her and smiles. At least that's what it looks like it is doing. Horses have such a patronizing overbite, and if they had a capacity for anything besides neighing, their smiles would surely be accompanied by raucous laughter. Nay, says the horse. Nay, says Penny. She's really pissed off now at this grinning mass in her lounge. There is no reason for it to be so happy, and she tackles it, momentarily tripping on the edge of the red carpet. She slams quite hard into its body, but it doesn't seem to mind. The horse's mouth, still gaping, shifts Penny into view, who reacts by grappling it with both of her hands, sticking her nails into the horse's muzzle, pushing the fucking thing shut. Nay! Perhaps in reaction to the pressure on its jaw, the horse perfunctorily slides backwards. Penny's feet are now swinging into its belly, and she begins crying, her sobs synchronized with the kicks. Now the horse has been violently awoken from its ecstasy, no longer smiling and ineffectually trying to move upright, but she weighs on its body. Both animals are crying out, her tears fading into the fiber of the red carpet, in which scattered glass occasionally catches the falling droplets, crystallizing into new and more precarious glassware. Her fingers crumple the horse's jaw, a sudden fragility which repels her, and something slides out of her empty hands and breaks into a virulent nasal assault, a liquid that isn't strawberry-scented. Penny nearly tumbles off the chair she is seated on as she realizes she has dropped her glass of water on the ground amid her existential lamentation. Then she feels it coming, an inexorable ocean of acid that sweeps over the red carpet. It becomes the moat for a small table, upon which resides a photograph of a man who now oversees this familial castle, Penny's father, actually, a man so deranged in his parenting skills that for years he force-fed his daughter nothing but strawberries. Nay, got what I want. Penny exits from her house. Contrary to what she had said, she had nothing except a hollow feeling that lingered on the back of her neck. Good. The doctor begins pacing down the driveway. Let's go and investigate. Investigate what? Apart from that, he points towards a pile of bones in the garden. We need to find out where that distress call came from. Penny's gaze remains on the bones. Up until now she hadn't seen them. It bothers her how dismissive the doctor can be of such macabre sights. Company with him is guaranteed emotional claustrophobia. Never is she given sufficient time to absorb the death and decay that regularly transpires during their travels. A monk in brown robes emerges. It had come from behind her house, and it walks towards her with a deliberate and eerie caution, as if unaccustomed to movement itself. Is that a monk? She mumbles, primarily questioning her own senses. Look behind you, calls the doctor, but Penny has already seen the curious new figure. Is that a monk? Repeated again. Reality is still not cogent. Yes, unconvinced and somewhat frightened, she runs over to the doctor, who is examining the street, mentally cartographing the area and considering the ideal placements of alien booby traps and misanthropic dogs. By now, the road leading outside of Penny's home was glistening post-rainfall like wet tar, concaves in the ground produced by erosion filled with water, making their journey onwards a veritable obstacle course. A screaming comes across the sky. What was that? Sounded like a gunshot. exclaims the doctor, leaping into action, at last in his element. They hurry into the back of a stranger's house and confront the sight of the orange blood. "Look, Doctor! Orange blood," Penny stammers, trying to confront the situation as best she can. "Yes, the alien blood." It is clear that they are both operating on a similar wavelength, postulating alien origins of the murder scene. "What alien has orange blood?" "I don't know." Yet there was a distinct hesitation. His tone suggested he did know, and so Penny was not surprised when he glanced at her somberly, adding, "But it could be Zygon." In the doctor's younger and more vulnerable years, his companion asked him a question that he has been turning over in his mind ever since. Vulnerability on Gallifrey is never a singular condition, never a passing mood or shade of emotional weather, but rather a composite of centuries, a kind of sedimentary fragility, built up by repeated layers of condescension from elders, repeated disappointments at the mechanical politics of the High Council, repeated gnawings of exile and return. Vulnerability calcifies into character by the time he brings the TARDIS, sputtering and thirsty, back into the docking bays beneath the Artron refueling towers. He wears this vulnerability like a robe, and Gallifrey, eternal, stultifying Gallifrey, receives him in silence, except for the click of sandals on red marble. The Academy is always awake and always dreaming of its own superiority. The operator at the fuel intake controls is no genius, just another portly initiate of philosophy, who has been allowed near machinery under the mistaken impression that he can use his mind to discipline matter. His eyes are transfixed on the oscillation of a crystal rod, ornamental metronome, toy, or perhaps calibration instrument, depending on which dusty manual one consults. This operator, this lad swollen with his own ambition, has just finished a dissertation with the absurd title, "A Newer Refutation of Time." A typical Gallifreyan production, endlessly long, shamelessly circular, proudly nonsensical. The poor fool argues that to refute the existence of time requires time, which cancels the attempt by tautology. The doctor smiles when he recalls it, smiles at the pointless sweat, the printing, the presenting, the reading by the dean, the coffee-stained errata. All of it was a long rehearsal for ridicule. Some reviewer in Philosophy Weekly called it post-Omegan nonsense, and the lad has not yet recovered from the blow. The doctor, standing with his hands folded in the pockets of a scarf long enough to strangle a dozen bureaucrats, observes this Gallifreyan scene as if it were theatre staged exclusively for him. There is always theatre here, the towering headdresses, the pompous ceremonial gait, the refusal to contract cancer, unless the malignancy would be of note to the Academy's journals. The Time Lords, querulous and vain, ornament themselves with sickness and self-importance. Even the experiments conducted in these low halls are dramatizations, overfunded proofs of their own irrelevance. It is in this setting, humid, academic, perfumed faintly by incense imported from Metabilis 3, that an old sandal scuffs the floor, breaking through the system of locks and wards that should have kept out every visitor. The sandal belongs to Tiresias, elder and wanderer, prophet and friend. He has been a colleague of the doctor for so many centuries that memory cannot separate the true meetings from the fictive ones. He enters with his decrepit footwear, muttering through the lint of his robe, and greets the doctor with the same old line he always uses. "I think the last time I saw you, you were this tall." He gestures to his own shin. It is, as always, untrue. They have seen each other many times across the centuries, and the doctor was never that tall. Yet it is ritual, and the doctor entertains him with a smile, just as ritual requires. "Tiresias, my old colleague," he says, "I'm afraid I won't be here long." Just leeching from some of the local Artron banks. The words fall into the cavern of Gallifrey's air, sterile and arrogant. Tiresias nods. His eyes, cataracted by prophecy, see beyond the glint of the fuel gauges. He folds himself into a chair, sandals still exposed like a parody of humility. The ornamental metronome continues to swing behind them, ticklish, an object of pure oscillation. "You will not be here long," Tiresias repeats, "but the memory of this stop will be long. I warn you, Doctor, that your near future has been spiked with inevitability. You will be forced to use the forbidden swords of Rassilon." The words land heavily, though on Gallifrey all words pretend to be heavy. The forbidden swords, legendary, ceremonial, kept in vaults where only the most sanctimonious archivists are allowed to sigh upon them. Weapons that are not meant to be wielded but to be forbidden, to be invoked as reminders of restraint. For the Doctor, they are myth, and myth is intolerable. To be told he must use them, that inevitability will drive his hand, fills him with an unfamiliar chill. He has never liked Gallifreyan prophecy. It lacks subtlety, it lacks sense of humor, it lacks escape routes. Yet here Tiresias sits, muttering with the full confidence of one who has seen every possible variation of future and found only the same conclusion. "The swords?" the Doctor echoes, pretending to laugh, trying to ease his own discomfort. "I'd be more likely to knit with them than fight. I don't use weapons, you know that." "You will," Tiresias says. "The future compels. There will be a time when all your cleverness, all your evasions, will contract into a single moment where only the swords can speak for you." The ornamental metronome swings. The young operator still gawks at it, oblivious to the gravity spoken behind him. The scarf hangs from the Doctor's shoulders like a burden. He adjusts his hat, makes the smile again, though this time it falters. To understand why the prophecy unsettled him, one must understand how much the Doctor had invested in avoidance. He was a maestro of avoidance. His life was an orchestration of sidesteps, a ballet of detours. He had spent centuries making sure he never had to draw blood with anything sharper than his tongue. Now Tiresias threatened to puncture that ballet with a crude blade. The Doctor, who prided himself on talking monsters into surrender, who prided himself on running instead of killing, who prided himself on surviving without firepower, was being told his survival would depend on Gallifrey's most forbidden relics. "You always did enjoy being dramatic," the Doctor murmurs, but the words sound brittle. "Dramatic or not, it will be so," Tiresias replies. "You will remember me when the hilts cut into your palms." The flashback ends with that image, the hilts heavy in his hands, unthinkable yet inevitable. And so we leave Gallifrey, the scent of lavender from its gardens, soured by prophecy, and follow the Doctor's TARDIS as it spins through the vortex. Its engines refueled, but its pilot waited with foreboding. Richard Hooman is already watching. Norfolk sunlight glances off the lenses of his binoculars, smearing the world into trembling discs of color. He has been watching all morning, though what he sees is rarely what others see. Margaret, his wife, has long ago grown weary of these fits of attention, the sudden proclamations that some silhouette on the horizon is more than a silhouette, that the Doctor himself might be glimpsed wandering across the fields. The Doctor has become for her husband a perpetual apparition, half ghost, half obsession. "I don't believe it!" Richard exclaims. His voice is quick, excited, but the binoculars remain clamped to his eyes like a second skull. He does not look at his wife, nor at the world around him, only at the narrow circle of magnified foliage. "What is it, dear?" Margaret asks with the weary sweetness of long repetition. "I thought I saw the Doctor for a minute." "Oh," all intrigue evaporates from her voice. "You must be dreaming, darling." She says it as one says it to a child who insists he has seen fairies in the hedgerow. She says it because she is tired of the memory. Years ago, both of them had fought alongside the Doctor against Davros, that grotesque creator whose hysterical laughter still worms its way into Richard's sleep. She remembers the confrontation as one remembers a chapter in a book, vivid, finite, concluded. For Richard, it has never concluded. The battle broke him open. His mind has been a sieve ever since, filtering every ordinary day through the debris of that encounter. Chagrined, Richard lowers the binoculars slightly. His hands clench, as though gripping tighter will lend solidity to his sightings. He mutters, "Yeah, I suppose so." The binoculars rise again like a reflex. "Come on," Margaret urges. "Let's continue." She means their walk, their holiday, their attempt at something normal. Norfolk has offered them gardens, lavender, the unthreatening flatness of English countryside. It has offered them the possibility of repose. She wants her husband to accept the offering, but then the impossible resolves into the actual. A familiar scarf, a face half hidden beneath a hat. The wild eyes of the doctor himself appear in the garden path ahead. "Hello there," the doctor calls, stretching out an arm. "Doctor!" Richard cries, elation exploding out of his chest. "Hello!" Penny echoes brightly. Richard turns, almost pleading with Margaret. "Margaret, look!" "Hello!" Margaret relents at last, astonishment puncturing her skepticism. "It's the doctor and Penny." "Hello!" The doctor answers again, smile wide, voice over full. Margaret laughs, though beneath the laugh is chagrin transformed into concession. "So you did see them after all?" For a moment, it is as if the years collapse. The confrontation with Davros, the horror and the hysteria, the dead bodies and the near victories, all condense into this reunion. Richard's heart is alive with joy. His binoculars tremble in his hands. The doctor feels the weight of centuries lift slightly. Penny, watching, wonders at the strangeness of this joy, wonders how ordinary human beings manage to carry on after colliding with such monstrosities. The thing that startles Penny most during this recoup is the way Richard fidgets with his binoculars. His fingers crawl over the lenses, adjusting, readjusting, as if the object were less a tool than a talisman. She cannot recall this nervous predilection from their last meeting. It unnerves her. His voice sings with elation, but his hands betray him, and his eyes refuse contact with anything except glass and his wife. The disparity gnaws at her. Norfolk sunlight flickers in the lenses, and she feels as though Richard is trying to look everywhere except the present moment. Her proximity to Richard is not physical but spiritual, though she recoils from the word. She despises its abuse by New Age charlatans, the Norfolk church dropouts who preach communion with tree trunks and orgasmic communion with moss. She does not mean anything so contrived. She means the fragile unwinding of defenses, the way her selfhood loosens around him, strands of gauze unwinding into the air. Every thought she has spirals outward, wrapping him, wrapping Margaret, landing softly on the gravel path like discarded veils. It should alarm her, this erosion of self-preservation, but it feels strangely correct. The streamer of her mind flutters, a solitary brain banner of goo unfurling in Norfolk breeze. She becomes Richard and he becomes her, the boundaries collapsing in a melancholy solidarity, and then the sorrow of separation returns, fierce and absolute. She remembers again that Richard has been broken since Davros. She remembers that their closeness is not joy but grief. Richard's illness, long shadow of that confrontation, is not only psychological but corporeal. His body has become treacherous. Coprophilia, abhorrent, humiliating, has shackled him. He knows it. He feels the chains daily. Penny glimpses it in the nervous restlessness of his movements, in the way he clings to his binoculars to avoid clinging to worse compulsions. It was during an ordinary response to nature's call that Richard finally broke. He had thought it routine, but the benefactor of evil, the echo of Davros, had lodged itself inside him. He sat in that vulnerable human posture, trousers at ankles, when memory became possession. Davros laughed again in his head, the same hysterical snigger that once shook Skaro. Richard slammed his fist against the toilet tank, water sloshing, porcelain cracking, but nothing banished the laughter. He remained conscious throughout. That was the cruelty, lucidity within degradation. Each faculty of his mind fell, one by one, under the tyrant's shadow. He was aware of his own subordination, aware of every inch of control surrendered, yet powerless to resist. Now his thoughts manifest as images, not always coherent, often grotesque. Once it was the outline of a 1950s British telephone box that filled his inner vision, as if his very psyche had been shaped into parody of the doctor's TARDIS. The shape became everything. He felt compelled to transcribe it. Paint, yes, paint would trap the image, but his oil paints were in another room, and vertigo spun ceiling and floor into carousel. He reached instead for what was near, brown acrylic. He painted with it, smeared it, a parody of Manzoni, shit on canvas, but the essence was transferred. Margaret found him afterwards, despondent, trembling, hands still filthy. She did not scold him. She no longer knew how to scold. The doctor tries to pretend this isn't happening. He is overjoyed to see Richard alive, Margaret alive, both ordinary, both survivors of Davros. He laughs, shouts greetings, repeats hello like a mantra. For a brief flash, he allows himself to believe that everybody holidays, that two of his companions have been permitted the mercy of normality. But Penny sees beneath the veneer. She sees Richard's binoculars trembling. She sees Margaret's exhaustion. She knows the doctor's exuberance is as fragile as Richard's lucidity. The dialogue resumes, brittle but necessary. "What are you doing here, Doctor?" Richard asks, binoculars dangling now. "We crash-landed here," the doctor answers with that old mixture of pride and apology. "Oh," Richard murmurs. "And you're on holiday," Penny offers brightly. "Yes," Margaret confirms. "We needed a break." The doctor's tone hardens. "Have you noticed anything strange whilst here?" Richard replies instantly. "Well, yeah, we did see something very strange." "What?" "A monk, and lots of piles of bones." Penny gasps. "We saw a monk as well." "Where did you see these bones?" the doctor presses. Margaret explains. "They were scattered all over the churchyard." "Take us to this church," the doctor demands. "Why?" Margaret asks, startled. "This may be where all the clues are." "Okay," Richard says, subdued. "Come on." "Come on," the doctor echoes. The quartet begins to walk, awkwardly unified. Norfolk roads glisten from recent rain, puddles scattered like traps. The doctor strides ahead, mind already racing through cartographies of alien infiltration. Penny lingers, caught in the emotional gravity of the humans. Margaret, practical, adjusts her bag. Richard, binoculars clutched, tries not to see too much. As they walk, the doctor remembers Tiresias. The prophecy echoes, uncomfortable. He imagines the hilts of the swords of Rassilon pressing into his palms. He tells himself it will not come to that. He tells himself the humans are safe, that Norfolk is nothing more than Norfolk. He tells himself the bones and monks are explainable, but the memory clings. Tiresias's voice, frail yet certain, "You will be forced to use them." And ahead, somewhere beyond the next hedgerow, the Zygon menace coils, orange-blooded, waiting.